Hello, everyone. It's a great honor to be with all of you today to share some thoughts on an important topic, a topic that certainly there's no shortage of dialogue on, as it should be, frankly, because the world of AI is certainly changing the possibilities for our schools, our students, our educators, and certainly the world. And the time and talk that we have on AI is certainly critical. I want to thank you, first off, for all the amazing work, the leadership, the foundation that you're putting in, thinking about this, dialoguing it, using it, and beginning the change that is happening all around us. It's happening in our classrooms naturally. It's happening with student energy. It's happening with new industry and new businesses happening in your country. And it's certainly exciting, but it requires some deep thought. And I'll share some of that and reflect really on a journey that technology has had for a long time. I've been working with schools around the world for over 30 years. And certainly technology has been foundational to all of that. And it's actually been that journey that we've been on from the early industrial revolution elements of building technology into industry to advancement in modern technology and computing to the work that we've been doing with really breaking through with cloud compute, which allows us to think differently about the limitations of hardware and the physical computers in our offices, and really think differently about the compute power exponentially. And that has really given rise to not only powerful algorithms, but the foundations that we've been building for AI. Now, AI is nothing new, as many of you know. This has been discussed and dialogued and sort of being building towards since the 1950s. But the advancements of modern compute, cloud exponential storage and capacity, as well as advancements in algorithms, has really created the watershed moment that we're in today. But it's important to understand that journey because it often may seem like AI is something new and something different. It's part of an ongoing tech evolution for sure. But we need to think differently about it because a lot of that computing journey has been really restrained by the realities of the hardware capabilities. And we've got to think differently now with AI because those limitations are slowly going away. And what we can do and what we can build is actually changing. And that's certainly going to open up a lot of questions with schools. That's sort of the foundation of this conversation. It's certainly real and exciting that AI can do things. And certainly we see it helping teachers save time. We see it providing tremendous support for students, whether it's an AI guide, a tutor, a supporter. Certainly those things are real and happening and certainly things that we should embrace. We certainly see AI potentially offering some problems as it relates to maybe skill erosion and things like that. But fundamentally, there's exciting promise around AI. I want to highlight that that was also true 20, 30 years ago as it relates to the rise of computing. There was a tremendous expectation that the introduction of computers was going to change everything for schools. And certainly there's been a lot of change. Certainly the availability of content and communication, ability to communicate beyond the classroom, beyond the lecture, and to students all around the world is something that is fundamental to the introduction of computing, and it's something that is unique and different, what we're doing right now, actually. But as it relates to results, outcomes, the structure and pace of schools, little has changed. We haven't seen technology dramatically improve learning outcomes, graduation rates, PISA test scores across the world. And the way in which kids go to school and the structure of the school day, for the most part, there's certainly outliers and exemplars, hasn't changed. And I think that's an important thing to note because as we think about this, we've got to really challenge our mindset. And currently right now, I think we're in a mindset that AI is directly connected to generative AI. And I think if we look back 20 years from now and say, well, that AI era was largely defined by students, educators, apps generating content, lesson plans, tests, practice problems, etc., we will have missed the mark. Just like, for the most part, the technology journey, the computer era in education, was largely defined by acquisition. One of the things that held us back with technology is many plans were direct connected to, we're going to acquire computers. We're going to get kids access to a one-to-one learning device. And there was very little thinking about, okay, now what does it enable? What changes? How do we prepare our culture, our environment, our expectations, our assessments in this new era with new thinking? And we've got to challenge ourselves to do that. And that's essentially the foundation for where we are today. We haven't really maximized the world of computing, computers, our current technology in classrooms and what they can do in education. And the gap is now exponentially wider with AI. What we can do, how we can think, how we can structure our learning environments is much bigger than it was a year or 2 years ago. And that requires us to really embrace this. This is one of the reasons why EdHeroes in this conversation is so important, because we need ideas. We need bad ideas, frankly, even just so we can learn from. We need good examples that schools are using and bad examples so we can learn. This is an important time for you. It's important to lean in with optimism and enthusiasm because for the most part, this is going to be a tremendous opportunity for your educators and your students. And it's important and critical as we think about this. And I want to just highlight really 4 key areas. And I think these are the 4 areas that all of your conversations should be focused on primarily. There may be others, but these are the 4 big pillars. And these are the ones where all of the things that you're looking at, buying, evaluating, and policies you're focusing on should fall under. First one, and I'll touch on all of these, is depersonalization. This is a real foundational thing, and it requires different thinking than just providing a tool to a student. Personalization in the world of computing meant we're going to get a device to a kid. And that's fundamentally not the way it works with AI. It's not we're going to give an AI subscription or account to a student. It requires a lot more deep thinking. I'll touch on that. Support for educators. Obviously, getting those same tools to teachers is another important piece. Operations, which is not something that we often talk about. It's often the boring part or maybe the non-sexy part. But frankly, I would think it's the most important part as you think about your AI plans and strategies, certainly in the beginning. And I would say the last piece is the most important conversation, the most important outcome is what happens in your schools and classrooms to prepare students for a workforce that is changing, that will change more, and your students will enter a world where the jobs, the opportunities, and their ability to create industry and innovation is changed. And that's going to be the foundation to how we think about schools and how we prepare our learners for the future. So those are the 4 areas and pillars. And I'll touch on all of them quickly. Pursuit of personalization has been part of our journey with technology and education from the beginning. And it's been part of education, frankly, from the beginning. The very roots of our early education modalities were often defined by a learner and a scholar working together. As the need for industry, crop production, the Industrial Revolution created factories. The need for industry required us to recognize the dynamics of an agrarian calendar where students needed help with farms and crops, to where adults needed to work in factories and the dynamics of the workforce changed. We formalized education institutions, which are largely filled by limitations. We had limited educators, limited learning materials. We clustered students into a limited time schedule where time was the fixed asset. We had to progress students through a learning journey quickly. And the variability was learning, understanding, grades, things like that. We continue on that journey today. The rise of technology was almost an area to expand, that ability for a one student to a one learner to learn anywhere, anytime. But fundamentally, that system of a time-based model where students are learning with homerooms and groups, getting grades based on their understanding of content and moving on regardless to the next chapter or the next book, regardless of where they learned, is commonplace today in our classrooms, built on those same limitations, frankly, from hundreds of years ago that no longer actually exist with the new world of technology capabilities that we have. Certainly, we see this evident from the data. We know that the demand of the need for personalized learning is creating pressure on students, as well as obviously pressure on teachers. And we see this happening with teacher burnout rates, teachers thinking about leaving the profession, and certainly see that with regards to expectations coming from students. And I think the pandemic had a huge part of this. Many of you know and went through this yourselves. During the beginning of the pandemic, the first goal was to keep the learning as consistent as possible in a virtual space. So when we all went to virtual schooling, the initial thought, which was frankly a smart thing, was, well, let's keep it normal for kids. We'll keep the same structure, the same schedule, et cetera. What we quickly realized was that wasn't going to work due to digital fatigue. The ability to actually keep kids focused and engaged in a virtual space was much harder. And what good schools and educators started to do is break out learning, having small groups work on projects, maybe check in a couple of times a day individually with a student and see how they're progressing on learning assignments and projects. And then maybe interspersed with a smaller lecture style experience for students. So you started to break up and mix modality learning with much more personal connection to students. Then we thankfully removed the limitations from the pandemic and went back to school and resumed the old world, again, thinking that that was the right thing to get back to being together and building the structure. But the student experience that happened with that personalization is creating deeper expectations of that experience again. And that's leading to increased behavioral issues as well as performance gaps, including certainly the burnout implications on teachers. So we've got to think differently about how we open up the opportunities for kids. And I will say, for me, when I hear AI, the most important opportunity is the impact on scheduling and mixed modality individualized instruction for students. So the ability to actually move kids around, to optimize pedagogically learning spaces that are reflective of different learning modalities that students can navigate through dynamically based on how they're performing. So their calendar, their schedule is changing based on their learning understanding and progress and specific needs. That is the way in which new schools will power themselves, because one of the frankly real problems that schools have had is scheduling has been hard. Even with modern computing pre-AI, to do dynamic outcomes-based scheduling differently, it was very, very difficult for computing, and certainly schools optimized to keep kids clustered because it was the easiest path. Now we can really remove that limitation, and that's certainly something that's super exciting. There's need for personalization, and certainly this is an area that we've got to think about and think about holistically. There's lots of different remediation efforts and enrichment efforts that are happening to individualize instruction, but they're often disaggregated, add more logistical and operational pressure to educators and students, and are often not really transparent. So we don't see data, we don't see progress. So we can't build on what works or replicate success broadly because it often is such a patchwork of activities. But it's going to be needed. And if you think about, I highlighted that the future of AI shouldn't be, the era shouldn't be defined by generative AI only. Certainly, I would hope that AI connects to ability to unleash true personalized learning expectations. That's not just true in a digital format, it's true in how the structure of learning is done. Everything from content to learning modalities to assessment all needs to be personalized in this new world and the new opportunity. Let's talk about the unsexy part, and that's operations. This is something that is often not going to be the first thing that you're shown or discussed, partly because your users, your end users, your students, your educators are going to get there fast, and they're going to want to start getting their hands on AI, and they probably already are. And the vendors that support you, the tech companies, often will be fueled by, for every foundational platform and operations company, there are hundreds of content STEM companies that are providing solutions to the market. And that's often because those people are eager to help students and classrooms and experience. They're coming from a place of a learner. They're excited about contributing to education. And that's where it starts. And so that's often crowding the education landscape. But I will tell you, as you think about this, and this is just an analogy here, if I was going to start a company to manufacture and distribute honey, The first thing I would do, thinking about a world of AI, was thinking about everything other than producing honey. I wouldn't have a conversation with the queen bees and tell them what we need to do. I would think about everything from recruiting using AI, and certainly that's an area that school leaders need to think about, thinking about the way in which we're going to market, distribute the product, and actually create measurement across every aspect on looking at signals in the market. I would think about managing finances and budgets, things like that, where I would start there, and I would leave the magic alone. With education technology, unfortunately, the reverse happens. The magical relationship between a student and educator, the things that teachers inherently know how to do to inspire your students and learners, often gets crowded by technology tools and examples with good-meaning leaders trying to provide solutions to help. And the back office crumbles, leading to other problems and limitations. This is certainly true in the world of AI, where the classrooms are certainly outpacing from a usage volume the back office thinking around everything from space management to facilities management to depersonalized and dynamic scheduling to the way in which we use energy, the way in which we manage budgets, certainly teacher recruitment and development, et cetera, et cetera. And obviously, of course, integrating data transparently and actively across a school. This is areas where we need to put rigor and focus. I know it's often not the most fun, but it's the foundation, I think, to the future of what we're going to build together with AI. Let's talk about, frankly, the most important piece last, and that is the implication on the workforce and certainly the world we're building. We were just talking, I probably presented to many of you in the past, talking about the fourth industrial revolution. That was really defined by this digital revolution that was enabled by cloud computing and sort of the broad availability of data. That revolution lasted very few years, partly because AI is sort of a different thing, and it's created a different pressure on the workforce and workplace dynamics, and certainly different opportunities for industry, ability to create a business, and really the dynamics of skills are changing dramatically. And it's important to note because this is something that I think is actually been a huge eye-opening experience with the world of AI. And I think it's summed up best by this quote from Sam Altman. And this is something that many of us focused on technology and education have been trying to do, is get more kids in front of screens thinking that the world of work is going to be defined by ability to work with and use computing. That's still true, frankly, but the dynamics of AI are going to remove jobs that are basic because AI can do the work of people that were dependent on a screen. And the ability to be away from screen and the skills that you demonstrate and leverage when you're not directly in front of a screen is going to have higher premium in the future workforce. It'll be harder to replicate or displace with AI, and that's going to be so much more important for society. Now, there's a huge caveat here. That doesn't mean those people aren't using technology and powering AI to do that work. But it's not dependent only, and they're going to be using technology more. And this is certainly true with the dynamics of STEM implication. Many companies are getting coding done 40, 50, even greater percentage with AI. So the need for coders has gone down. The need for people who understand how to use AI is higher. Many companies have requirements that 100% of employees are using, creating, and building with AI. Because they can build apps, shortcuts, they can create GPTs for their own work directly, and companies are putting that requirement. So the usage of tools are there, but the dynamics of how we've thought historically about STEM are fundamentally changed. That's super important as you think about the future of work and building a dynamics for skills that are changing industry and changing potential. Now, lastly, I want to talk about the foundation for your teachers, your staff, and that's to be people first with this transformation. I think fundamentally, one of the fears that happens with AI and AI's arrival in education is, wow, I am going to be reduced in value, or maybe my job is going to be eliminated because I'm going to be replaced by a robot or AI, et cetera. I think first off, give educators hope that confidence that that's not going to happen. I think as the rise of technology grows, we saw this in the pandemic, the value of educators increases. The need for that human connection is more appreciated and more valued and more integral to the environment. I think that's certainly going to be the case going forward. AI assistants for students are going to be commonplace, but the value that human relationship comes is going to be more appreciated, and it actually gives your educators more agency to do far more differentiated instruction, to use data and tools themselves to have deeper impact and deeper relationships with individual learners that will hopefully make their job more rewarding and fulfilling. So those are the four big pillars, but I'll leave you with some big recommendations that I think are probably true and probably will be true beyond AI. And I think one of the things with AI that I would say that I would recommend first is start with the problem, not the tool. Partly because there's lots of tools and the ability and capabilities with AI are going to get better and better. I highlighted the importance of back office. I think this is probably one of the areas that I think is going to be most durable. Many AI solutions will change and grow, and it's very easy to start an AI company and build an AI solution because you're using AI to do that, build apps and build experiences, create your own GPTs and things like that. The most durable part, the thing that's going to change your landscape is how do we think about the structure of our day? How do we think about scheduling? How do we think about mixed modality? I walk through classrooms and schools every day where they have 4 or 5 eighth grade math teachers. And those math teachers are basically dividing the student population into groups of 40 or 50. But those 5 math teachers, all teaching the same exact content and curriculum, have different skill set and capabilities. One of those 5 is the best for sure at doing lectures and structured content to large groups. There are some of those that are much better in project-based learning or supporting one-to-one instruction and guidance, or maybe getting students active with project-based experiences. But instead of having all those 200 kids work across all 5 educators, we assign the 40 of those kids to work with one across the same content they're going out, as opposed to thinking about using our educators and our space differently. And I think that's certainly going to be important. And that's just one of the elements of the back office. One of the things that you're seeing with large companies like Microsoft, certainly, and Google, is they're starting to embrace AI holistically. And I think that's going to be the bigger piece. There's AI platforms, ChatGPT, Anthropic, et cetera. They're going to be building across, but then obviously the large companies are going to actually have a better hand on AI, where your teams are getting active versus all the different AI tools that are coming from smaller startups. I think eventually you'll start to see those be eaten up by the large systems and platforms. Moving past content when it's different is very straightforward, and thinking about how are we changing the environment. I think that wasn't necessarily the case with our first thinking with computing. Let's get more content, get more stuff. How do we think about the structure? How do we think about the assessment dynamics we're focusing on? Depersonalization, we highlight a lot on personalization. Personalization is exciting in terms of how it looks for all of your staff and learners. And then obviously, rethinking the dynamics of STEM in a new world dependency is super important, and it really reflects, I think, frankly, a changing opportunity for kids, and really bringing AI and technology for all kids, not just kids that are going into the profession of building, computing, learning, coding, and things like that. I'm excited about the future. Even though I've given a lot to think about, hopefully building on what others have shared during this forum. There is tremendous opportunity with great leaders and educators like you, and great opportunities for our kids and countries to really rethink and reshape based on this new future. I know it's often scary when there's unknown happening. This has happened before. I can tell you from firsthand experience, the animosity, the anxiety that exists in the current world of technology with AI in schools existed 20 and 30 years ago with teachers and schools with computing. When schools were buying computers, that same fear happened. What we should do now as leaders is embrace the opportunity, bring excitement and energy to your teams, your people, your teachers, your communities of families, because the opportunity for every student to be their best, to make a huge impact on the world, is really at hand. And the students in your schools and classrooms are going to fundamentally change the world, and we should do everything we can to support the educators that make that possible. Thank you for the great work that you do. It's a pleasure to share some thoughts in this forum. Have a great rest of session, and thank you for the work that you do every day.